Mars, the red jewel of our solar system. A world we've been trying to reach, understand, and one day call home. You've probably heard of Perseverance, Curiosity, and the rovers that boldly rolled where no wheels had gone before. But there's one mission you won't hear about too often, one that was supposed to change everything. This is the story of Mars Observer, the billion-dollar spacecraft that disappeared without a trace, and the theories that followed. Launched on September 25, 1992, the Mars Observer was one of NASA's most ambitious missions of its time. After almost 2 decades without a major Mars mission, this spacecraft was meant to restart our exploration of the Red Planet. It wasn't a lander or a rover. It was an orbiter, designed to circle Mars and collect data on its surface, its atmosphere, and even its magnetic field. It was loaded with some of the best instruments available at the time. A gamma-ray spectrometer to detect the composition of the Martian soil. A magnetometer to analyze magnetic fields. High-resolution cameras to map the terrain in ways we'd never seen before. The goal was simple, but powerful. Understand the planet deeply enough to prepare for future exploration, and maybe, eventually, human landing. Mars Observer cost nearly $1 billion in today's terms. Expectations were sky high, and for most of its journey, it was performing perfectly, until everything went silent. August 21st, 1993. Just 3 days before it was set to enter orbit around Mars, the Mars Observer stopped communicating with Earth. One moment it was sending telemetry and status updates. The next it was gone. No signal, no warning, no error codes. NASA scrambled to re-establish contact. Nothing worked. Over the course of several days, engineers sent hundreds of commands, hoping the spacecraft was still alive and could respond. But there was no reply. Ever. So what happened? Officially, NASA concluded that a rupture had likely occurred in a fuel line during a routine pressurization procedure. The spacecraft's propulsion system may have failed. If that's true, it's possible that parts of the spacecraft were damaged or even destroyed. Without propulsion, it couldn't correct its trajectory. Without communications, we'd never know. But here's where things get interesting. Some engineers at the time believed the spacecraft may have actually entered Mars orbit, or at least made it to the planet's vicinity, before losing the ability to communicate. It's not impossible. The pressurization process that likely caused the failure happened during a planned maneuver. If the spacecraft survived long enough to coast into Mars's gravitational field, it might still be up there, orbiting silently. That idea sparked a number of theories, and some of them are a little strange. The first is what some have called the spy satellite theory. According to this one, Mars Observer may have carried classified instruments on board. There's been speculation, never confirmed, that the Department of Defense had piggybacked their own payload onto the mission. If true, it wouldn't have been the first time military interests influenced space exploration. Some believe it was designed to test surveillance technologies from orbit, possibly even watching the Earth from a Mars vantage point. Sounds far-fetched, but in the early 90s, Cold War secrecy hadn't fully thawed yet. The second theory dives deeper into conspiracy territory. A small but persistent group of fringe researchers believe Mars Observer may have discovered something unexpected. Some kind of anomaly, perhaps even artificial structures or signs of intelligent life. According to this theory, communication was lost not because of a technical failure, but because someone didn't want the data coming back to Earth. Again, there's no hard evidence for this, but the complete radio silence combined with the lack of wreckage or telemetry keeps this theory alive among believers. The third theory is the simplest and perhaps the most tragic. That Mars Observer did exactly what it was supposed to do until a single mechanical failure destroyed the mission. No mystery. Just the brutal reality of space travel. One weak link, one overlooked risk, and it was over. Regardless of what truly happened, Mars Observer's legacy is undeniable. The lessons learned from its loss directly influenced the design of future missions. In 1996, Mars Global Surveyor launched with improved redundancies. Then came Spirit and Opportunity. Then Curiosity, Perseverance, Ingenuity. each one carrying a piece of what Mars Observer never got to deliver. In a strange way, the failure helped NASA get better. It forced a rethink in spacecraft design, mission planning, and communications protocols. Engineers started to build spacecraft that could survive more failures and still find ways to phone home. And yet, somewhere out there, Mars Observer may still exist. Maybe it's buried beneath Martian dust. Maybe it's quietly orbiting, dead but intact, a ghost satellite drifting through the silence of space, forgotten by most, remembered by a few, a symbol of how little we control when we leave our world behind. So the next time you hear about the latest rover or the dream of a Mars colony, remember this. Before we saw those high-definition panoramas of Martian valleys and skies, there was a mission that never sent a single image back. A spacecraft that vanished right on the edge of history. A billion-dollar bet that we still don't fully understand. This has been Cosmic Vault. If you enjoyed this dive into space history and mystery, consider subscribing. There's more to space than what we see in headlines. And sometimes it's the missions we don't talk about that leave the biggest mark. Stay curious.